Hi, welcome to the Learning House. I'm Corey, and today I'm meeting with Peter Stock of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association in Canada. Peter, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time. Tell me a little bit about your homeschooling journey and what brought you here to being the president of HSLDA Canada.
Sure, yeah. So we have 4 children, and when the oldest two were just hitting school age, 5 and 3, we thought we'll give this home education a try. We'll try it for a year and see how it goes, and we did that, and we enjoyed it, and we found it was successful. And we thought we'll do it for another year, and actually we've taken that approach all the way through our educational journey with our kids, and evaluating year by year what's best for them. And turns out that home education's pretty wonderful pursuit, and it's just been such a great benefit to our family and to our kids. And now, most of them are adults, and we're seeing them thrive in the world. And we think we believe strongly that their home educational background has really provided a solid foundation for not just academics, but for life and enjoyment, and the pursuit of a career and all those sorts of things as well.
Yeah. And I know that your journey with your kids has kind of we've sort of been next to each other in these lanes for a lot of years, where our kids have met up in a class here or seen each other at a conference there. You've got a few that have graduated, I've got a few that have graduated, and still one at home, so
Right.
It's kind of cool. And we started that way too. I think it'll work for this year. Let's see where we go. And here we are. It's a slippery slope, eh? Now we're all in, and we knew that it was, it really is an individual thing for our kids, but has been a phenomenal opportunity for them to sort of think out of the box in terms of their educational opportunities so often. So from homeschooling dad of 4 kids to being at the executive level of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, what brought you here?
Yeah. Well, the job came open and I applied for it. That's the short story.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I hadn't any idea in my mind that was something I would pursue one day, but I did, and I found that it's just such a unique organization, and the opportunity to lead it is such a special thing. You're able to be in contact with home educators right across the country, families in every province, and we have such a wonderful movement. There's so many great things happening, and we're seeing the results, in our kids, as we were just talking about. And so it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And HSLDA serves families right across the country. We do that, through a range of services we offer. But we also unite the movement too. We're the national organization. We've been around a long time, as we've talked about, and we've made a real investment, and we're seeing that investment pay off. So it's an exciting place to be.
And we've been in contact and worked with different organizations provincially all across the country. But like you said, HSLDA is the only organization that is working all across Canada to unite this movement of home educating parents, or parents that want to be in charge of their children's education. So HSLDA is 30 years old in Canada. Tell me about how it started here.
Yeah, so the story basically is that at that time, 30 years ago, families faced the threat of, some families anyway, faced the threat of fines and jail time, and even having their children apprehended for daring to choose this educational option. It seems bizarre to us nowadays. But what they did is that they gathered their resources. Hundreds of families gathered their resources and contributed and founded this organization. And the idea was, let's hire a lawyer who can defend our interests in court and advocate for us at the legislatures. And so that's what happened. And it's a long history, of course, over 30 years, more than 30 years. But we've come from a place where homeschoolers were persecuted to a place where homeschooling is legal and free in all 10 provinces, all 3 territories. Now, having said that, of course, Corey, we still have problems across the country. Not every school board official, not every social worker necessarily understands the law or respects it. And so we find ourselves regularly having to defend families from overreach and challenges from government agencies, from school boards, etc.
Mm-hmm. And we hear that often. Like I do consultations one-on-one, and so often I have parents come and they will say, I've given notice to the school board that we are going to be homeschooling, and they have said I need to A, B, C, D, which we know that in this province is not required. And I like the way that you say that, whether it's out of ignorance or overreach, they are asking for some things that are inappropriate and expecting to have oversight that's not necessary. And we talk to parents who say, also, on the other hand, they say, why would I need a lawyer? Or why would anybody need to be advocating on my behalf? Homeschooling's allowed. There's no need for political advocacy on our behalf. So you do still hear from parents about those kinds of things.
We certainly do. And in fact, unfortunately, we're so busy now, we've recently had to hire an additional lawyer to help serve our families. So things are getting busier, not quieter in that regard. And if I can mention this, it's a sad thing, but we've had a number of provincial elections in the last year or so that have changed governments or maintained governments that were, in both cases, not necessarily friendly towards homeschooling. And so we're seeing at this point in time increased oversight, increased demand for information, increased pressure to quit homeschooling and return to the public schools, et cetera. We're seeing that kind of pressure coming from governments that have, I would say, quite frankly, an ideological motivation. And that ideological motivation says we want a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter public system. Everybody's getting the same, I would say, indoctrination. And that doesn't happen, of course, in a home education environment. As parents, we decide what we're teaching our kids, and we want them to get a good education, and they do. That's not necessarily the case in the public system. And probably hasn't been for a while now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I know that there are families that have great experiences in public education. I'm not always hearing that. That's like you and I both hear people who've gone through difficult things. But there is a lot of that overreach of schools, administrators, principals, guidance counselors, teachers, board officials who say, I think this is the way it should be, or this is a policy that we have within the school board, and we're going to apply it to you, even though this child has been removed from the authority of that school board.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I find it amazing to think that we still have these problems when it's a question that's been talked about for years and years and years. But I mean, we live in a sinful world where people are going to always have differences of opinion and stuff, and they don't always get enacted in a kind way. So parental rights are not always the predominant goal. So
unfortunately, no.
Thank you. Thank you for being involved on that proactive and reactive level. So that's something that I've always appreciated about HSLDA is that people who say, oh, we don't need legal representation. I can say, maybe that's because there's been so much proactive work that you haven't felt how HSLDA has been involved in the protection of your parental rights. On the other hand, reactively, HSLDA does get involved in proceedings on behalf of families. Tell me, how often? Is that really something that happens often, or is it sort of something that just happens, every so often at HSLDA that you're involved in real legal proceedings?
No, unfortunately, it's a regular occurrence. We get calls every week that require legal assistance, intervention, advice, etc. Some are fairly minor. You get some overreach from a school official that's trying to pressure a family back into the system, and our legal team can usually shut those sorts of things down very quickly by just sort of writing a letter or making a call and saying, here's the law, and you need to respect it. And that's usually the end of the matter. However, we do regularly, unfortunately, deal with a lot of other situations, especially in the area of family law, where a situation may not directly be about home education, but it will have an impact on home education: separation, divorce, fostering, adoption, anonymous complaints, or disgruntled relatives, teenagers. Again, the pressure can come from a lot of different directions. Surprisingly, most of the people that we help never expected to have a problem. They're doing a great job homeschooling. They're giving their kids their best, and yet out of left field comes a call, a knock at the door, a letter, a challenge of some sort where they, and if they don't know how to deal with it, they can quickly find themselves in serious trouble. With whatever agency they're dealing with. And this is where our lawyers step in. I mean, we have the best and most experienced team in the country dealing with home education law. In fact, the only team that deals with home education law in the nation. And for the price of a membership, it's such a bargain. If you ever run into this situation yourself, lawyers' fees, hundreds of dollars an hour. Our membership is far less than the cost of probably half an hour with a lawyer. So we're a bargain in that respect. And what we say to people who never need our help, and hopefully that's the case for most families. They will never need our help, but if their fees help to defend the families that do find themselves in these situations, often through no fault of their own.
And I know, like, from our own personal experience in our very early years of homeschooling, our family's been a ministry family, been in full-time ministry for many years. And there was a lot of really lean years when we didn't have any extra to spend. And I wanted to invest in HSLDA membership and felt like we couldn't do that. But as soon as we felt like we could, I did. And really, it was balancing out. Like, do we have enough money for groceries? Do we have enough money for the dentist? Do we have enough money for HSLDA? Those were things that we didn't feel were luxuries, but it has paid off, even though we haven't had like big contentious problems. Like, we got a letter once from CRA that said, prove these kids are your kids. And you got to do that by sending in a copy of the report cards. And I'm like, I don't have a report card for this kid. HSLDA was able to send a letter and say, yes, this is a member that has been homeschooling. They really are real kids, and things like that. So those are the kinds of things that have been helpful, even though we haven't had those big challenges. And we were foster parents for a while too. There was a time when we homeschooled our foster kids, and having advice from HSLDA during that time, because normally foster kids are not, it's not an option for them, but it was something that we were able to navigate in some circumstances. So having HSLDA to sort of bounce those questions off of and answer those questions was really helpful for us.
Right.
And so, we're getting towards the tail end of our homeschooling now, but I've always been really pleased to have a home, to have that membership, to know that if it wasn't something that I had to dial in for us right now, thankfully, that at least we could know that we were helping to defend the rights of other parents, which in turn does help me in my right to parent my children the way that I see most appropriate. Absolutely.
And in fact, that raises a very good point, because occasionally we do have families that their situations or their cases can create precedents that will affect all other families in a given province. The last really big case we had was in Quebec, and we fought for a family all the way up to the Quebec Court of Appeal, and we won there. And that actually created a situation where the government of that province had to actually revise the law. And so this actually created greater homeschool freedom in that province for families as a result of that court battle. That was fairly recent. And But what I would say is that court battle going all the way to the Quebec Court of Appeal cost a lot of money. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And that's only possible when we collect our resources together. We're nonprofit, and we do this for the benefit of not just our member families, but of course for homeschooling as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So when the rubber hits the road, what kind of services, besides having a lawyer that's available to intervene when I have troubles, what other services do you provide at HSLDA?
Yeah, no, great question, Corey. So we tend to sort of focus more on what you might call professional services that you might not be able to get as easily elsewhere. So one of the things we provide is access to hopefully affordable insurance for groups. You know, your support group, your co-op, you want to do sports or a field trip or just meet regularly on a Friday at some location, and you need insurance. And we've provided access to what we hope are reasonably affordable options in that regard. The second area is, of course, just general advice. You know, that's everything from getting started to applying to post-secondary institutions, homeschooling through high school, all the big topics that that many families will encounter at some point. Now, there are many, obviously, in our world, and especially, you know, if you look around the internet and so on, you can find advice on some of these, on most of these topics fairly easily. But can you talk to somebody? Can you actually have a conversation with an experienced staff member who has done it themselves and who knows how things work? And so that's something that all our staff can provide, because we're all parents who've graduated or homeschooled our own kids all the way through. So that's something you can count on from us. The other thing we have, of course, are consultants who help with questions on, first of all, exceptional needs. If you have a child who has learning challenges, or maybe they're incredibly bright, or whatever it is, we have a specialist who can help with access to resources and questions and those sorts of things. We have a curriculum consultant as well. We also provide access to student cards, teacher cards, and some other great information as well. And I'm just going to mention briefly two other things that I think families would really enjoy with an HSLDA membership. One is we have a digital library. So, you know, you go to the Learning House to buy your curriculum, but then, you know, sometimes curriculum also has supplementary material, you know, the classic books or the great books or other great literature that might be a supplement to your learning. And so this is something that is available through the digital library. We don't specialize in curriculum there. We leave that to the experts at the Learning House and other booksellers. But if you're looking for, whether it's just great reading for your kids to keep them occupied, or audiobooks you want to listen to while you're doing dishes, or you know, after dinner, or maybe books on home education and parenting and those sorts of questions. We also have collections that are focused specifically on things like Canadian history and biography, hobbies, sports, you name it. So that's one great resource that's free to our members, the digital library, over 3,000 audiobooks and ebooks. And the other thing that's coming out in the next few weeks, which I'm quite excited about, this is actually historic, I think, and that is a special issue of our magazine that's focused on college and careers.
Yes.
So, you know, this is a first. Nobody's done this before. I've never seen this anywhere in the world. A college and careers magazine for home educators. And so the idea is, you know, you receive this at home and you get a lot of information about applying to post-secondary and your various options and gap year and all sorts of things that maybe you haven't begun to think about, advice from other homeschooling families. And this is the neat thing. There's going to be a ton of advertisers in there, schools, universities, colleges, other institutions that have said, we want your home educated graduates to come to our institution. It's in it's in color. It's not in black and white.
It's in print.
So the neat thing about this is, you know, some of us have the skeptical relative, the unsure person who maybe works in the school systems. Home education, I'm not so sure about that. Your kids won't get into university. Some of us have heard that before.
I know, it's terrible.
That's rubbish. But here's the
Yeah,
proof.
it is
You're going to
rubbish.
see ads in there from institutions that you know the names of. And
Mhm.
they're saying to our grads, we want you to come to our institution. They're advertising directly to home educators. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about this. I think this is precedent setting. And for those that had concerns, hey, this should dispel a lot of them.
Yes, both dispelling concerns and giving people some real concrete information about specific schools and their guidelines. And I actually did hear about this coming from some of your staff there, and I'm excited to see that because we do a lot of counseling with families and consulting with families about moving from high school into post-secondary pathways and what's available for homeschoolers. And it's really exciting that there are so many schools that are eager to have our students.
Yeah.
I know that many years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago now, I had a conversation with a university admissions person who said, we actually seek out homeschooled students because we know that they are already ready for university level learning. And that's because traditionally high school students are used to going to class for 30 hours and doing 10 hours of homework. But when you get to university, you're going to go to class for 10 hours and do 30 hours of homework. And most homeschooled students are used to that level of autonomy already.
That's right.
And that was something that she noted, that one thing in particular. I talked to another professor recently who I know, who I've known for a number of years. And he said, at our school, it's going to be a bottomless pit for homeschoolers. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, what I mean is there's never going to be, we're not going to run out of seats for them, because if they come qualified, we know that they can perform because we've seen that homeschooled students come and they are successful at the university level. Absolutely. So they're going to make space for them, which is kind of cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, and universities do this knowing they successful students are what they need. They don't want kids who are going to drop out after 6 months or a year. That costs them money. They spend a lot of money on admissions and applications, and it costs them when students leave. So they want to know that their applicants are going to be successful. And homeschoolers again and again are proving this is true.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. It's pretty exciting. Now, it's easy to focus on universities, but colleges, apprenticeships, workplace admissions, military, these are avenues that our kids are taking successfully. And I know that you at HSLDA, you and your whole team there help families to navigate those pathways like we do here at the Learning House with our, Help for Homeschooling High School course, with our consultations and various things. It's really cool to be able to see that families can move successfully from graduating a student at home into post-secondary pathways. We were really privileged to be able to offer a scholarship this past year for several homeschooled graduates as they went on to post-secondary learning into colleges and universities. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And we got to hear from some really cool, really neat applicants who had done some pretty neat things and we're moving on to other things now in their post-homeschool days. So we're hoping to be able to do that again.
Fantastic.
So another bit of nitty-gritty stuff. Who is qualified to be a HSLDA member? Do you have some parameters for assessing? Like when I applied to be a member, what do I have to do to be qualified?
Well, we're just really interested in supporting any family that wants to home educate. Now, having said that, we do draw the line at people who are in the midst already of some sort of significant legal challenge. Let's say, they're in court fighting over home education and they'd like to gain our assistance. At that point, we kind of have to say, well, we're not really willing to take on the burden of thousands of dollars of legal costs for a situation that already exists. But generally speaking, it doesn't matter what your background. It doesn't matter the educational method you're choosing or the curriculum you're using, etc. I mean, we'll give you advice if you're struggling, obviously, but you're free to home educate the way you see best. We see incredible value in parent-led, parent-directed education, and we want to support every family that wants to take that route. So anybody's welcome to join as a member.
Okay. And do my kids have to be a certain age?
No,
Is there a too young or a too old?
No, we get folks that join even before their kids are school age, and they're perfectly welcome to do that. So it actually makes a lot of sense to join HSLDA before you're getting started, because if you do run into any sort of challenge, especially from a school board, we're there to defend you from the word go. And it's much easier to do that when you are already a member, and you get that initial phone call, letter, knock at the door, whatever it is. We can be there to offer assistance immediately, and we are available literally 7 days a week. So
yeah, and when I've needed help with those like CRA questions, it was a quick turnaround. I'm sure you have seasons when it's busier than others, but our experience was that we were able to get a hold of somebody quickly, and we heard back from you in a reasonable amount of time. So that was really nice too.
Good.
Does HSLDA deal with, or do I have to be of a particular religious affiliation to join HSLDA?
No, in fact, we have people. I'm aware we have members from all sorts of religious backgrounds and non-religious backgrounds as well. So again, we're simply interested in supporting any family that sees home education as the best choice for their kids, and we'll support them in that journey.
And is there anything that I need to do as a member to report to you? Do you require members to sort of say, hey, yeah, this is what I can say we're doing to be actively homeschooling so that we are defensible, or do you require anything?
Well, we don't require anything directly from members. It's a free country, and you do what you feel is best. However, there is a requirement, and it's right in our membership agreement, and this is the case from a legal standpoint in any part of the country you live in, and that is to keep good records of what you're doing. So it doesn't matter what educational method you choose, you do need to keep essentially, we might call this a portfolio, or just a set of records of the subjects you're teaching, what you're teaching in those subjects, maybe test results if you're using testing, or samples of essays, pictures of science projects, whatever the case may be. And the reason for this is if you're ever challenged by any sort of a governmental authority, school board, truant officer, social services, whatever, we're able to take your records and defend you. It's very hard to defend a family that has no records. Did you homeschool? Well, you say you did, but prove it. And this is the way to do it. So that record keeping requirement isn't so much something we're demanding, especially of families. It's actually demanded by the law. And so we're just saying, as members, as homeschoolers, you need to know the record keeping is an essential part of your homeschooling journey. Do a good job at it, and if you ever are challenged, it makes it so much easier to defend your rights and freedoms as a home educating family.
Right. Now we recommend that too. Keep records, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like we do a ton of testing. I have to have an essay every week done or something like that, but more. I mean, even for an unschooling family who says, we don't want to use any formal curriculums, keep a list of the books you read and all the field trips you went on. Write down those conversations that were significant, or those assignments or projects or key events, things that you participated in, so that you can keep track of those things. We often tell people to just take a snapshot or a copy of the table of contents of any curriculums that you went over. It helps to sort of give a scope and sequence if you don't otherwise have a scope and sequence. Those are the kinds of things, but I'm not giving them to you. I'm only giving them, I'm producing them should a challenge come up.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. So those are my own.
So we make no demand directly of the member for any sort of information in that regard. But families need to keep it for their own protection.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it tends to be useful especially as you move into the high school years,
Mhm.
because our kids do go many different directions, with future schooling or even employment, and
Mhm.
having good records, having what is essentially a CV or a resume of what they've
Mhm.
achieved academically is valuable to them, especially when they're applying to colleges and universities.
Yeah.
You can say, here's the work I've achieved. In
Mhm.
fact, I know that the University of Western Ontario in particular, or I think it's called Western University now. They changed the name a little bit. Has a homeschool admissions policy, and it's largely based on a portfolio of work. It's what
Mhm.
you've done as a homeschooler. They're not interested in, SATs, or in the same degree that other institutions might be. They
Mhm.
say, we recognize homeschoolers do great things, and
Mhm.
show us what
Yep.
you've done. So
Yep.
it's not just a sort of a legal requirement, it's also to the benefit of the student,
Yeah.
especially as you get into those high school years.
Yeah. One of my kids applied to Western, and I was really surprised they asked for a resume. And I
Yeah,
thought, I don't know any other school that would ask for a resume, but they
right.
did. And what a great opportunity to showcase our kids when we can say, this kid is a lot more than just a series of numbers on a page. So
Yeah,
cool. And from what I hear, more schools are even taking those traditional brick and mortar school students and putting them through a process of saying, tell me a little bit more about yourself, because they see this advantage of getting to know a student a little bit more holistically, which our students have to have. So yeah, that's really interesting. And we always counsel people too. Your student is at some point going to come under the authority of a next educator, whether that's in their workplace or at an apprenticeship, in the military, as an entrepreneur, at a college, at a university. There's going to be a next educator. There's going to be somebody else who wants to look and say, is this child qualified? And if there's the possibility that they're going to go to college or university at all, we need to start to talk that language of, courses and marks and stuff, even if we don't march that march. So give people those, keep those records so that you can show it to people as needed when your kids move on to next educational steps.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I know that part of what you do is defending families who don't necessarily want to have the government involved in their children's education. And many families would like to not register with a local school board if that's appropriate or available in their own areas. So, for example, in Ontario, we don't have to be affiliated with a local school board if our children have never been in school. So, does becoming a HSLDA member in any way identify my kids as this is a homeschooled kid? Like, will the government ever have access to looking at member lists or say, be able to find my kids because we were HSLDA members?
No, those records are completely private. And I'll go further and say that, if you do run into any sort of legal challenge, and you're referred to one of the legal team,
Mm-hmm.
that information also stays just with the legal team. The staff, the rest of the staff in the office know nothing about it,
Mm-hmm.
nothing about the case. This is left between the lawyer and the member family, to as a matter of privacy. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're a private nonprofit, and the government has no truck or trade with us.
And they can't find a list of all these homeschooled kids
No,
by looking on HSLDA's member list.
no.
Now, anything else that you think that we should know, that our members, that our families should know about joining HSLDA? We haven't talked about the cost of it, but it's really not very costly. You can join monthly or annually. Um, Tell me about any other bits and pieces that we should know before I.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, you can join monthly, annually, or even lifetime. If you know you're going to be, if you feel like you're going to be homeschooling for the long term, the lifetime membership's a great bargain for
Mhm.
families that are thinking long term, for sure. Um, the other thing is, I suppose we've as I mentioned earlier, we've been around for a long time. our mission has changed somewhat in regards to how we serve the homeschooling movement. We went from, we're fighting for our very survival, our very freedoms. We've gained those freedoms, and now we're facing, the bureaucratic and administrative challenge of, as I mentioned, school boards, school officials, social services agencies, and so on. Unfortunately, I think we are heading back into a bit of a time of challenge again from legislatures. And I mentioned these provincial elections that have happened with some poor results in some provinces, and ideologically motivated politicians who aren't fond of home education for ideological reasons. The other challenge, of course, is a financial one. And because there has been such an incredible growth in the number of home educators across the country over the last few years, and COVID
really
sort of
has,
sparked this. People were at home and they realized, well, maybe
not so bad.
not so happy with
I
the
can do
school
it.
Yeah, and they got a chance to try it, and many of them found, quite frankly, we surveyed members of ours who started in the last few years. So we asked them the question, how did, what was your decision like, and how did you come to this place, and what do you think about it now? And most of them said, we're only planning to home educate temporarily. Schools are closed down. We'll just try it for a few months or a year or whatever. And what we found is that when we surveyed them is after they'd been homeschooling for a few months, they found three things in particular that really struck them. First of all, they saw their kids excelling academically in a way they hadn't before. So they saw the schooling part worked real well. But beyond that, they saw the anxiety levels in their kids drop. They said their kids are happier. There's less stress in their lives. And so that was the neat thing. The third thing that we universally heard was, we're enjoying this. We're enjoying our time together as a family. And so people were, there's thousands of families that were discovering the joy of home education for the first time. And most of them chose to stick with it after COVID. So what we've actually seen in the last few years is almost a doubling of the numbers of home educating families and students across the country. Absolutely. And that brings with it the challenge that schools and teachers unions, they don't have the same money coming to them. When we pull our kids out of the school system, for instance, here in Ontario, there's about a $15,000 to $16,000 grant that follows every child. So when we pull a child out of, we pull a family of kids out of the school system,
$15,000 to $16,000
annually. Yeah, that's just the operating cost for the grant.
Insane.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money.
Crazy. So
you lose 5 kids and you've lost a teacher's salary. And so the teachers unions are recognizing this, the school boards are recognizing this. And suddenly, they're saying, well, we've got to do something about this. They're not saying let's improve the educational system so everybody wants to come back. I haven't heard much talk about that, but there is an attempt in some areas to apply pressure to families. Oh, you have to do reporting. Oh, your kids will never get back in the school system if you find don't homeschool, because their future options will be limited, when in fact quite the opposite is true. So we're facing
we hear that every day. I hear it all the time. And again, sometimes it's out of ignorance, and sometimes it is out of some self-motivated things with regards to the schools.
So that's we're heading into some rougher waters, I would say, at the moment, and I would anticipate that lasting for a little while yet. Now, the good news is we have a couple things going for us as a movement in this country. One is that because of those increased numbers, I'd say it's probably the case now that most Canadians know a homeschooling family at this point. They know a homeschooling family. They may not choose to homeschool themselves, but they have a knowledge of that family. They see how the kids are doing. They see they're doing well. They have respect for the energy, the effort and energy and time and resources that the families are putting into their kids. And so I think there's a critical political mass of people out there who are willing to say, this is a good thing. Like, we shouldn't be squashing this. So that's really important. The other thing is, of course, we have HSLDA. I'll blow my own horn and just say, look, we've got an experienced legal team, experienced lobbyists. We know how to deal with government. And when the challenges arise, and they are arising, we are going to be helping to lead the way to defend our rights and freedoms in this regard.
So true. And we know that in some provinces, it's just so much harder to homeschool than in others. And HSLDA has done so much to help keep it comfortable in many provinces, and to help to make it more comfortable in those provinces where there is a lot of oversight and regulation. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I know too, like, as much as many students have been drawn out of the system, they also are pretty cognizant of the fact that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of students that are being educated at home, and to flood the school system with all of these students would cause crisis as well. So I don't think that we're talking about losing our ability to homeschool altogether, but about the possibility of more oversight, more regulations, more restrictions, and so on, that we always have to be on the watch for. We know here in Ontario that there's laws that impede the teachers and administrators from talking to parents about some key issues that may have to do with their own kids. And those are things that we hear from parents. Like, I don't like it that this is going on at the school and the teacher's not allowed to tell me about it.
Right.
Those kinds of things shouldn't be a barrier between parents and schools and stuff. So seeing those barriers come up is a red flag. So
it sure is.
Yeah.
And it's causing ever more numbers of families to consider their options, private schooling and home education. So
yeah. So any tips that you have as a homeschooling dad, or as the president of HSLDA, for families, any last ideas that we should pass on to them to help them to thrive as homeschooling, home educating families?
Yeah, I think a couple things in that regard are really important to consider. One of the things that we tell every member family, and I would say this to every homeschooling family across the country, try to be involved with a support group or co-op. Home education, we have our ups and downs. Some months are easy, some months are hard. I think many of us find that we get to February or March and it's tougher. The midwinter blues take hold, and the house seems smaller, and all those sorts of things. You need community, and you need the encouragement and advice that comes from being with other homeschooling families. So try to be involved in a support group or co-op wherever you live. May not be perfect, but try to make that opportunity available, not just to your kids, but to moms or dads who are the parent teacher. You all need that. Second thing is to be involved with your provincial association. Now, obviously, I'd say join HSLDA. That's important for all the reasons we've already talked about. But provincial organizations are important too, because we partner with them in whatever province we're talking about, whether it's Ontario or elsewhere, to advocate with the government when there are issues. And also, they tend to put on, depending on the province you're in, a provincial conference, and it's usually the biggest conference in most provinces. That's an important event, and I not every family can make it every year to a conference. I understand that it can be expensive, especially if it's over a weekend or whatever, and babysitting's an issue, and travel's an issue, and etc. But if you can get to a conference, that's also another great source of encouragement, inspiration, place to get questions answered in person, a chance to see your curriculum firsthand and talk to Corey and others about this math book's not working so well, and what are my options? You can see it, and you can touch it and feel it, and
far more economical to have a conversation with somebody who knows than to buy it and try it, buy it and try it, buy it and try it.
Absolutely, and you save on shipping too. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So those are all great reasons.
Those intangibles that you're saying, though, just hearing from good speakers, getting into the vendor hall and seeing the resources, but more than that, just getting into a crowd of other people who have a like-minded interest in home education, it can just be so encouraging and a great place to network and meet people. Really
Yes.
important.
Yeah. And so in our experience as an organization, we've definitely come to the conclusion you can homeschool on your own. You can go and live, off the grid and, miles away from everybody. It's possible, but it's hard. It's very hard. And being in isolation is probably not a recipe for success in most cases. Being in community is a great, have a greater chance of success. And so we just strongly encourage that. We all need community, and if COVID taught us nothing else, it taught us that
Absolutely.
the lack of community we experienced during that time was horrible. And so again, be proactive about this. Seek out these support groups and co-ops. Try to get to a conference, and this will help to enhance and lead to greater success in your homeschooling journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me today, Peter. It's always good to chat with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with all of our families the services that you offer.
Thank you, Corey.